switch my view over. I have it on the books right now. Oops. Hi everyone, can you see me and hear me fine?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, it's very nice. Yes, I am able to hear you really well.
Perfect.
Thank you. Well, is everyone ready to begin then?
Yeah.
Great, so you guys are in Quebec, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Actually, I have done a few conferences with Canadian schools, but mostly in Alberta, so this is pretty cool. This is my first video conference, I think, with a school in Quebec. And right now I'm in Washington State, and so we're traveling quite a different distance over the video conference right now, which is pretty cool. Alright, well, you might be wondering why a 12-year-old is talking to you today. Well, my name is Adora, and at the age of 7, I published my first book. It's called Flying Fingers, Master the Tools of Learning Through the Joy of Writing. And more recently, I published a second book. It's called Dancing Fingers, and it's a book of poetry that I co-authored with my older sister. Now, one of my favorite things to do actually is read, and when you read, often in class you might be asked to write something called a response to literature. Now, to bring this into perspective a little bit, have you ever gotten into an argument with a brother, sister, or friend about what to watch on TV, or what TV show is the coolest? Raise your hand if you ever have. I see some raised hands. Probably nearly everybody has gone through that kind of thing. If not TV, it might be what's the best book, whatever. Have you ever tried to convince someone that a certain book or band was the coolest? I'm seeing a lot of raised hands. Probably so. So how did you convince them? What did you tell them to try to convince them that it was?
What'd you do? You guys can't be shy. You were chattering before.
Okay. What are some other ways you try to convince people that your book or band or show is the coolest?
Well, Colton? That's the best. That's better than what we picked.
Okay, so you might say that's the best, but obviously when you say that's the best, then you'll get into, no, mine's the best, no, mine's the best. And so what you want to do is support that with reasons. So for instance, if my sister and I are arguing about whether to watch America's Next Top Model, which is a really stupid show, or Jeopardy, and I'm telling her America's Next Top Model is a really stupid show, well, I have to back that up with reasons. I have to say it is, I don't know, degrading to women or something because all the people in here are very mean and unintelligent, which reflects badly on the modeling industry or something like that. Now, obviously no one talks like that, but that's the kind of cool stuff you get to do in response to literature. When you write a response to literature, you're kind of doing the same thing, except you have time and some better weapons at your disposal. Writing a response to literature. Oh, that's fine. That happens all the time. So I looked up literature in the dictionary just to make sure that that was the right definition, and it said fiction with artistic value. So that's translated, it basically means a story that is meaningful or interesting, which is kind of a broad definition. So what are some stories that you consider meaningful and interesting?
What kind of stories do you like? Fiction.
Fiction? Okay, so why don't we start off with fiction? So more specifically, what type of fiction? Is there a genre that you like, maybe?
What kind of fiction do you like? I like science fiction.
Science fiction. Okay, great. So is there a particular science fiction story that you find really interesting? Anyone?
What's your favorite book? Right now.
Percy Jackson books.
Okay, Percy Jackson books. Those are kind of science fiction, right? Or fantasy. Something like that. Alright, so what you can do is, if you can't like pinpoint a favorite book right offhand, you can start off with fiction, then a particular genre, and then think of it. So when you think of the Percy Jackson series, say, do you consider that literature?
Okay.
definition of literature. Literature is fiction with artistic value. So you could argue the Percy Jackson series is high literature or something. So what about this? Could a comic book be literature?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm hearing some yes. Okay. So that's an interesting response. Maybe it could be, but you might have to do some convincing. Because when people think of literature, they think of Jane Austen and Charles Dickens, which is fine because that's literature too, but it might take some convincing to tell them a comic book is literature. And that's why you made those reasons all nicely laid out. Knowing how to write a good response to literature, besides being fun and giving you a chance to defend the books that you love, is a key to academic success. You'll be writing a lot of these in the years ahead, I'm sure. So when you write a response to literature, you have the opportunity to think about a book we like, reread passages, share ideas, and learn more from the characters. It lets you kind of go deeper. We have the chance to make our enjoyment of the book last longer. When we write a response to literature, we have the opportunity to convince other people that we are right. When we write a response to literature, we have the opportunity to defend the story we like. You learn a sophisticated conversation skill, and writing a response to literature helps you successfully respond to other people throughout your life. And then another cool thing is that when you write a response to a book, story, poem, or movie, you have the chance to express your thoughts, feelings, opinions, and ideas about it, and it lets you explore those on a deeper level. Now, I like this analogy. It's kind of like when you get in an argument with your sister about what show to watch on TV. So, me arguing with my sister about how dumb America's Next Top Model is. So you might try to convince her that the show is really boring, or maybe the plot, the characters, let's say it's an episodic show or something, or the way the story is told. You might say the storyline is unrealistic, a character is too perfect, something like that. So when you write a response to a book that you don't like very much, you use the same tactics. You would try to convince your reader that the book isn't worth their time. So you can write a response to literature to books that you really like or really don't like. You should probably feel kind of strongly about it just so that you have that emotion to back up. Now, if you were trying to convince your brother or sister that his or her show wasn't worth watching, what kind of example might you give in order to support an argument? So just hypothetically.
That your favorite show has the best characters in it?
Okay, so maybe my favorite show has the best characters in it. So how might you show that a character is so great? All the stuff that they do. So maybe you could say, well, my characters are really great, they're really well formed, they do a lot of stuff in the story which makes the plot very exciting. The characters in your show are kind of badly formed, they're stereotypical characters, they're not three-dimensional, something like that. So, and you can use tactics like that really well in your response to literature as well. Now, if you wanted, you could respond by telling your teacher that the book was a crock of dung, but I do have one disclaimer that might not get you a very good grade, and also the trick is to write something that really shows the reasons and gives that statement some background. In order to convince your reader that your opinions are worthwhile, you need to be able to provide reasons. When you write a response to a book that you didn't like very much, you use the same tactics. You try to convince your reader that the book isn't worth their time. Oh, oops, sorry, I think that was a repeat from... Oh, sorry, these slides repeated right there. Okay. So you need to provide evidence. And literature is a piece of writing with artistic value, which means that in your response to literature, let's say you're choosing kind of an unconventional piece of writing, you need to back up why that was literature. So literature is generally considered the most prestigious type of writing. Who gets to decide what literature is? Usually it's adults, but today we get that opportunity to choose what's literature, and we can kind of back that up. So there are many types of fiction that aren't usually considered literature. Mysteries, adventure novels, horror novels, romance novels, and comic books, to name a few. Now, choose a story that you want to defend. Choose a work of fiction that you think is worthwhile, that you think is meaningful, interesting, and that you think is literature. So it should be something that you've already read, something that you feel pretty familiar with. So what are some book ideas you have for your response to literature? What are some books you would like to write about?
Diary of a Wimpy Kid.
Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Okay, great. Any others?
Jerome Stilton.
I'm sorry?
Jerome Stilton.
I didn't quite hear that. Could the teacher repeat that?
Jerome Stilton.
Jerome Stilton. Was that what it was? Jerome Stilton. Okay, great. And any others?
The Twilight series.
The Twilight series? Okay. And let's get one more.
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter. Okay, great. So we have pretty much all popular fiction rounded out right here. And these are usually not considered literature probably, but that gives you the chance to defend them, to say, I think this is literature, I think this is a great book, and that's why I think it is. So, for instance, for mine, has anyone ever read this comic series Calvin and Hobbes?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, well, Calvin and Hobbes is kind of a funny comic strip. It's about this rambunctious kid named Calvin and his pet tiger, Hobbes. Now, he thinks that so Hobbes, to the adults, looks like this stuffed tiger, but to him it's this, living tiger. So it's kind of about the difference between kids' imagination, kids' reality, and adults' reality, which is a really nice topic for a comic book, in my opinion. So I chose one of my favorite Calvin and Hobbes books, Something Under the Bed is Drooling. And I'm going to prove that something with drooling in the title can be literature too. Now, the way I'm going to go about doing that is start off by writing an outline. What's an outline?
The plot of the story.
Yeah, well, let's see. An outline for a story would be the plot for a story. If I'm writing an outline for my response to literature, what do you think that would look like? Any ideas? So let's say I want to defend this idea, a book with drooling in the title can be literature too. What are some steps I might take?
The beginning, middle, and end.
Exactly, the beginning, middle, and end. So I want to have my introduction, I want to have my body, and I want to have my conclusion. So let's start with the introduction, the first paragraph. Oh, and by the way, here's kind of a cluster I might use. So I would start off with my statement, a book with drooling in the title is literature too. And then I would use things like the style of the book, the characters, the plot, and the theme to back that up. So that's an example of brainstorming. Let's go on to the formal outline. In paragraph number 1, so that's the introduction, I want to grab the reader's attention. Does anyone know what the sentence you use to grab the reader's attention is called? It might also be something you use to catch fish with. Well, yeah, the hook, exactly. The hook is the sentence at the beginning that grabs the reader's attention. It kind of snares them like fish. Sort of a weird analogy, but here's an example of this hook. Want to escape to a lazy Sunday? Pick up a copy of Something Under the Bed is Drooling by Bill Watterson. So the hook is want to escape to a lazy Sunday. That's sort of asked as a question. What would I call this question at the beginning that I don't really expect anyone to answer? Well, when you ask a question as a hook that you don't expect your readers to answer, it might be a little hard for them to answer, then it's called a rhetorical question. So a rhetorical question can be used really effectively as a hook. So in paragraph number 1, for the introduction, I want to grab the reader's attention. Then I move on to summarize the plot. So you guys said that you haven't read the Calvin and Hobbes comic series, and let's say that a lot of people haven't. So then I would need to summarize the plot, and this is a good idea, even if you're writing response literature to a book that probably everyone has read, just so that they're able to review the book. So, for example, Calvin is terrified of the monsters under his bed and does everything in his power to stop them, including spraying toxic insect spray and attacking them with a fire extinguisher, but he constantly gets in trouble with his parents who don't believe in monsters. So in this summary, I'm telling about the main plotline of the book. it's Calvin versus the monsters, but it's also kid reality versus adult reality. So I'm kind of laying out that theme right in that summary. So you want to grab the reader's attention, summarize the plot, and in paragraph number 1, I'm also going to tell the readers about my purpose, what I'm trying to do. So I will tell the reader that I aim to defend the book. I'm looking at Calvin and Hobbes from a positive light. I'm saying this is a great book, this is literature. Here's an example of the way I might do that. Maybe a comic book isn't the first thing that springs to mind when you think of literature, but Something Under the Bed is Drooling by Bill Watterson is full of deep meanings, and nobody can claim that it's not artistic since it has wonderful drawings in it. Now that I have finished my first paragraph, the introduction, I would move on to paragraph number 2. So in the second paragraph, I would tell the reader about when and where the book is set and how this makes the book interesting. So you would summarize the book and you tell about the setting, where and when the book is set. For example, the book is set in Calvin's neighborhood, in the woods behind his house, and most importantly, in the worlds of Calvin's imagination. The parts set in Calvin's imagination contrast sharply with the normal world his parents seem stuck in. Why would it be so important to talk about a setting?
So you have an idea to where it's at?
To have an idea where it's at, very good. You want to tell the reader about the setting for one of the same reasons that you have the summary, because the reader may not have read the book, it might be a long while since they've read the book, and they need to know that information. What might be another reason you would tell your reader about the setting? So they know what's happening. Very good. And another thing is that the settings in books always play an important role in how the book goes on in the plot. So you want to tell about the setting because it's an important ingredient in the book. Now in paragraph number 3, I would move on to plot. What is plot?
To tell the story?
To tell what the story is about. Very good. So the plot of the story is what happens in the story. For example, Calvin's battle with the monsters is both exciting and funny. It's exciting because the monsters are very sinister, and it's funny because Calvin is sure that the monsters are real, but his parents think that he's making the whole thing up. So what is the thing that plots in pretty much all books have, that one thing?
Something big happening?
Something big happening, very good. Specifically, something big happening might be a conflict. So what is conflict?
Problem?
It would be the problem. It would be where the character might have to fight against something, they might have to make a decision. So most plots in a lot of stories you'll read will have a conflict. And here's the conflict right here. Calvin is sure that the monsters are real, but his parents think that he's making the whole thing up. There's your conflict. So you want to lay out the plot for the reader in paragraph number 3. In paragraph number 4, I would tell the reader a little bit about the characters and describe how they make the book interesting or meaningful to me. So, for Diary of a Wimpy Kid, how do the characters make the book interesting to you?
They make it funny?
They make it funny. Right, so what's the character's main name again? Oh, sorry, the main character's name again. Is it Greg or?
Greg.
Greg, okay, right. So he has an older brother and a little brother, if I'm remembering this correctly. And so you might think about how do those characters play off of each other? Do those characters contribute to how interesting the book is? Are those characters kind of comic relief? So think about things like that, and you would write about the characters. So in Calvin and Hobbes, the main character is Calvin, a rambunctious first grader. I like reading about Calvin because he gets away with all the stuff that I only dream of doing. For instance, I would never ride a wagon down a steep cliff and survive the fall as well. Calvin ends up doing a lot of impossible things in the comic strip, and those are things that I kind of end up doing. So you talk about why the characters make you like the book. In paragraph number 5, I would describe the book's theme, or the meaning of the book. Now, theme is one of those things that I know a lot of people have trouble with, but tell me, what do you think are the themes of some books that you've read? And books can have more than one theme.
A mystery?
Well, yeah, let's say a mystery story. if you have a mystery story, you might think about the theme. What is the kind of meaning? What is the meaning behind that story? So for instance, in Calvin and Hobbes, the book is about how imagination enriches our lives, kind of that message that the story gets across. The differences between the ways kids look at the world and the way adults look at the world. So that's another theme. And through his characters, Watterson also comments on the foolishness of many aspects of modern life. So we already have three themes right here. Imagination enriching our lives, the difference between kids looking at the world and adults looking at the world, and also the foolishness of some aspects of modern society. So a theme is kind of hard to pinpoint sometimes, but you want to read the story and think, what is the message that the author is kind of getting across here? In paragraph number 6, I would describe the writer's writing style. For example, Watterson writes in a clear, funny style that is full of intelligent quips and references to literature and history. How does the author of the Twilight series write?
Twilight experts.
In a serious way?
In a serious way, so it's written maybe kind of seriously. Specifically, what are some things that make the style of writing kind of serious?
How she intensely describes the actions.
How she intensely describes actions, very good. So it might be kind of action-filled at times, often very serious. So it's not too light-humored, it's pretty serious, it has a lot of gravity maybe. Okay, so that would be good, you would want to write about that. So writing style is something that's fairly easy to pinpoint. You read a passage and you think, how is the author writing this? Is this serious? Is this light-humored? Is this trying to make you laugh? You would think about how the writer is writing. And that's something that you do want to share with readers in your response to literature. And then in my last paragraph, I would tell the reader who the book would appeal to and why. So for example, the book would appeal to kids and anyone who remembers what it's like to be a kid, and anyone who wants to remember what it's like to be a kid. So ultimately it's kind of related to childhood. And so who would you recommend Diary of a Wimpy Kid for?
Kids.
Kids, okay. So you might say, I would recommend Diary of a Wimpy Kid to any kid who, specifically?
Who enjoys humor.
Who enjoys reading humorous books, maybe. And also, so what are some of the challenges that Greg faces in the book?
His big brother, graduate.
His big brother? Okay,
Yeah,
great.
he's
Is he ever bullied in school, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's
So,
bullied.
yeah, you could say, I would recommend this book to any kids who enjoy reading humorous books, who have faced challenges maybe with bullying or with annoying older brothers, and you could say because the main character might relate to you. So try to target your book. Think about who would really enjoy this book. Why do I enjoy the book? And form your response to literature around that. But first things first, as they say. Today we're going to be learning about writing a snappy beginning. Why is the beginning of your response to literature so important?
Because it tells everybody like what goes on, what's going to be going on in the story.
Very good. Yeah, it really provides that introduction, and it tells people what's going to go on in the story. Exactly. If you look back at our outline, imagine if we had cut off paragraph number 1 completely. Then the rest of our response to literature would be very confusing, because in paragraph number 1, our introduction, we are grabbing the reader's attention, we're summarizing the plot, so we're telling the reader what happens in the book. We're also telling the reader that we aim to defend the book. So imagine cutting all that out, or not having that at all. The rest of the response to literature would be quite confusing. So that's why writing that beginning is so important. Now, an introductory paragraph to a response to literature should list the name of the book you are writing about, the name of the book's author, and a brief description of the story. But an introductory paragraph has another very important task. Let me ask you this. Have you ever read something and then fallen asleep from boredom right after the first paragraph? Raise your hand if you have.
Yes.
I'm hearing a lot of yes, seeing some raised hands. So in your response to literature, you don't want to be putting people to sleep in the first paragraph. You want to get their attention. So we talked about using a hook. A hook is a sentence at the beginning of a piece of writing that grabs the reader's attention. A hook snares your readers in and makes them want to keep reading. With your response to literature,